Navis Nova, 66 BCE. They were a world away from the broken strongholds of Cilicia, but it was just as hot. They were waiting for the signal spread out through the market of Masua, which was a riot of color in the early morning sun, full of the calls of merchants and the dusty, oily scents of commerce. The fishermen were all coming to the market now. She watched Gnaeus leaned against a wall. His olive skin and jet hair made him just one more sailor of Yemen. Ichenia was on the beach to give the go signal. Pistris and Alitum were somewhere in the market. Gnaeus stretched and scratched himself. Angulia twisted through the shoppers and loaded stalls. Alitum fell into step beside her, one long stride to her every three. "You best have picked something fast," she hissed. On the beach they avoided the boys splashing in the waves, not watching their father's fishing crafts. Ichenia had pulled the mooring lines of a single-masted open fishing boat. Gnaeus and Pistris emerged from behind a breakwater. Gnaeus, the strongest rower, went first. He had to step over a barefoot body with a hat over his face in the shade of the stern. Once Gnaeus was at the oars, the other three bolted for the craft. Alitum and Pistris put their sinewy shoulders to the stern. Eyes on the beach, Angulia tripped on a stone anchor sticking out of the sand and landed on the body. The boat began to slide. She went to get up, but a heavy arm wrapped around her back. She wriggled out of the sleeping man's grasp as he ripped a snore that smelled of earth. Angulia placed a foot on the muscle above Pistris's knee and launched herself into the ship. The keel came free of the sand. Angulia and Ichenia reached down. Alitum and Pistris reached up and jumped. Then the four of them landed in the stern. Gnaeus pulled. Pistris ran to join him at the oars. Alitum raised the sail. Ichenia and Angulia looked back at the beach. The boys were pointing and jumping now. One was shaking the sleeping man to no effect. "I thought you would have slit his throat," Angulia said without looking over. Valerian was quieter. "We're beyond Pompey's reach. He has no power here," Ichenia replied. Angulia smiled as she felt the boat catch the wind while her men still rowed. Alitum had a sharp eye for a fast hull. No one would catch them now.
Long ago, perhaps 66 BC, in Yemen, there were 4 sailors. I only remember the names of 3, Ichenia, Gnaeus, and Angulia. 4 of them were on the beach as a ship was coming in. They saw a sleeping man, and one said to another, "I thought you would slit his throat." But alas, that did not happen. The 4 got onto a ship, and suddenly the wind caught the sails, and they started drifting out to sea, and one said to the other, "They'll never catch us now."
Long ago, perhaps 66 AD, in the desert land of Yemen, there were 4 soldiers, but just 2 had names of worth, Itchy and Mongol. The 4 sailors saw a sleeping man on the beach. Itchy exclaimed, "Let's roll this dude," and slit his throat. They escaped on his ship. Wind caught their sails, thunder boomed, and one sailor said to the others, "They'll never overtake us."
A long time ago, perhaps in 66 AD in Yemen, there were 4 soldiers, but I only remember the name of 2 of them, Ichi and Mongol. They slit a guy's throat on the beach. They escaped by sea, and there was a storm. There was lightning, and the wind tore their sail, and one said to the other, "We will not let this overtake us."
Gather round, ye wee children, for I have a story to share. 'Twas some time ago, 66 years after the sun woke from its eternal slumber. 66 AD for those of you not fully up on your time. It was a land far, far away, an exotic land, Yemen, known for their coffee. Our tale is about 4 friends. Itchy, Rubel, and 2 others whose names escape me at the time. Anyhow, these 4 fellows crept along the shore one dark and dismal evening. What they were in search for, they found. Be it a being or otherwise, they found it on the beach. Carefully, quietly, the 4 fools slit the throat of whatever they were after, bringing upon them the wrath of the island and its peoples. So the 4 quite nobly ran like the scared little chickens they were to the boat that brought them to the shore. And away they sailed as quickly as the sea would allow, though the blackest of waves and the bitingest of winds sought to bring them back to the shores of Yemen. Coffee. A lone voice spoke up over the sail, over the wind. We will not let this overtake us. And with that, slowly into the night, beating back the waves and placing the wind back under their whims, they sailed from Yemen's shores.
So I'm here to tell you a tale as told to me by Alan. I don't use accents though, so I'm sorry. You're just going to have to get the story in my own voice. So gather round, people, to hear the story of a dark and dismal night, 66 AD. So 66 years after the rising of the sun, 66 AD, 4 friends were in the land of Yemen. Did you know that Yemen's good for coffee? I didn't know that. Thanks, Alan. So these 4 friends, Itchy, Rubel, and we're going to say Bob and Martha because Alan couldn't remember the other 2 people's names, but let's call them Bob and Martha. So we have Itchy, Rubel, Bob and Martha were searching for something along the shore. And it was a dark, dismal, terrible night along the shore, and these 4 friends were looking for something, and we're not sure what they were looking for, but they must have found it because then they slit its throat. So I'm assuming it was some kind of animal or maybe a person, but they found it, slit its throat, and then they ran back to their boat and sailed away. So apparently they were just a hired group of assassins coming to assassinate something or someone. So they did that, and then they ran to their boat and they sailed away from Yemen through a storm. And it was really dark and windy, and they were fighting, and the storm kept trying to push them back onto the shores of Yemen, and they all 4 were hustling around the boat trying to make sure that they made it. And over the wind, a voice was heard. Maybe it was Bob. Said, "We will not let this overtake us." And they fought against the storm, and they were able to escape the shores of Yemen.
So, I'm here to tell you a story, as was told to me by Marge. Apparently, she says there's supposed to be an accent in the story, but she couldn't do it, so she didn't try, and she didn't tell me what it's supposed to be, so now I just gotta guess what the accent's supposed to be, and I'm gonna just go with French. I don't know if I can do a French accent. I don't know if it'll be very good, but we're gonna try. So come on, gather round.
This story takes place in 66 AD. That's after the rising of the sun. 66 years after the rising of the sun. There were 4 good friends in Yemen, which is good for coffee. Except maybe there's good coffee in Yemen? There was something about coffee. And the friends, they were Itchy and Scratchy and Bob and Martha. And they were searching the shores of Yemen on a dark and stormy night. And they found what they were looking for, and they slit its throat because they're like murderous pirates or assassins or something. And they ran back to their boat. That's why I think they are pirates, because they had a boat. And they sailed away. But the storm, it was battering them back, and they could not get away from Yemen. And their boat was just going back and forth in the waves. And then they hear a voice over the storm and the wind. And it's like that scene in The Lion King when Mufasa rolls in on the thunderclouds. But it's the voice of Bob, and he say, "We will not let this overtake us." And it's very inspiring to the other 3, and they fight the storm and they escape Yemen. And they have successfully murdered whoever that was. So it's a good story, unless you're on the side of the guy that got murdered. Mostly good.
Gather round, my children, for it is time for me to tell you a story of cunning, a story of woe, a story of mysterious events that was told to be my dear friend Anita, and I will try my best to tell it to you as she told it to me. Once, in 66 AD, in Yemen, there were 4 friends, and they were fast friends, but they were piratical friends. And their names were Itchy and Scratchy and Bob and Martha. And Itchy and Scratchy and Bob and Martha had a quest. So, after enjoying their excellent Yemenese coffee, they set out across the lands to fulfill their quest. They sought a creature, or perhaps it was a person, and upon finding it, a battle of some sort ensued, and they defeated their foe. They slit its throat from ear to ear, perhaps with one of their piratical swords, and then they escaped to their boat, pursued by perhaps the consequences of the murder they had committed. And then, once upon their boat, they sailed away, thinking they had made good on their quest. But then their ship was racked by a storm, and in the midst of the storm, a great voice boomed out from the clouds. "You will be fine." And this inspired them, and it was the voice of Bob, who, as she told the story to me, was also the one on the boat. And then they were inspired, and they sailed away home to record their legend in several clips on cell phones.
Now go to sleep, children.